Welcome and thanks for stopping by to listen to our episode of the Super Queero podcast. Today we are joined by Hayden, Tosin, Mickey, and Jasmine. On this episode, we are looking at the career and life of the Queen Latifah. Hip-hop icon, feminist, actress, and queer hero, Queen Latifah is a multi-talented woman who has paved the way for so many women today. Although keeping her personal life private, Queen Latifah proves herself to be a strong queer woman. Without further ado, let's get started. We are going to start this off with Hayden.
Queen Latifah was born Dana Elaine Owens and grew up in Newark, New Jersey on March 18, 1970. She chose the name Latifah when she found it in a book of Arabic names when she was 8. Latifah in Arabic means elegant, kind, gentle, and delicate. New Jersey in the 1980s for queer people was still somewhat hard for them since the anti-discrimination law against queer people was only implemented in 1991. This meant that queer folks needed a safe place to be queer in public. These places would be bars and clubs, as well as balls. These balls were usually organized by Black and brown folk, and they allowed other queer folk to be themselves, as well as have a network of people they can rely on and feel like family. Queen Latifah is very private about her personal life. She does have a partner, Ebony Nichols, and a son, Rebel. She announced this in her acceptance speech at the 2021 BET Awards, where she was awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award. In an interview with the New York Times in 2008, she's quoted saying, quote, "I don't have a problem discussing the topic of somebody being gay, but I do have a problem discussing my personal life. I don't care if people think I'm gay or not. Assume whatever you want, you do it anyways." End quote. As she is very private, it is presumed that Queen Latifah currently resides in or around Los Angeles, California, since her house in New Jersey was recently put on. Queen Latifah started to gain attention in the late 1980s, where she would sign to Tommy Boy Music and release her first single called Wrath of My Madness. The single would gain traction, and her track would then be sampled in other larger artists' songs, such as Ice Cube and Lil' Kim. By the end of the late 1980s and into the early 2000s, Queen Latifah started rapping about the struggles that Black women faced. By the late 1980s and into the early 2000s, Queen Latifah started rapping about the struggles that Black women faced at the time. She would then continue to release the music that would become She would then continue to release music that would become very popular, which led her to perform at the Super Bowl in 1998. This would also make her the first rapper to perform at any Super Bowl. She also made her mark in acting and singing in the movie Chicago. She also made her mark in acting and singing in the movie musical Chicago, which was released in 2002. This then led her into more acting roles due to the success of the movie as well as her own success. She would go into movies such as Hairspray, Stranger Than Fiction, 22 Jump Street, as well as Ice Age and onwards in the series.
She forced conversation about misogyny, sexism, violence against women into the public sphere. But one of her biggest cultural breakthroughs came through her acting, especially her role in Cleo. Her role as Cleo in Set It Off. That was a great movie, 1996. The character became one of the most iconic Black lesbian roles in mainstream Hollywood. At a time when queer characters were nearly invisible or stereotyped, because no one really liked queer people at that time. Queen Latifah's bold, unapologetic performance provided queer Black women with authentic representation that still matters today. I think one of her greatest accomplishment was becoming a multi-genre legend or advanced representation for women, Black communities, and queer communities all at once. I think she basically opened doors that simply didn't exist before her. And she did it while staying true to herself. How will she be remembered? I think Queen Latifah will be remembered for being a pioneer for women in hip hop, also a queer cultural icon. She got nominated a lot for the Grammys, and she got nominated in a lot of spots, in a lot of awards like the Grammys, what is it? I forgot the other one. And an Oscar, the Oscar. And she was also a champion of empowerment. Right now, Queen Latifah she kind of stepped out of the limelight. She basically just owns a production company. I think she co-hosts sometimes award shows. And yeah, she's just basically living a private life with her partner, Ebony Nichols. And she has a kid with. In 2021, she publicly thanked Ebony Nichols at the BET Award, a history-making moment for queer representation.
Queen Latifah not only continues to make an impact today, but truly was and still is a trailblazer in her industry. From the very beginning of her career, Queen Latifah would use her voice to advocate for women's rights, their voices to be heard, and for women to join hands in order to demand better treatment. The modern hip-hop industry's diversity is something that I can confidently say would not have happened without songs like UNITY, Unity, and her debut single, Ladies First, and songs like Wrath of My Madness. Queen Latifah was quoted saying, "We can't keep this thing going with one person. We need a bunch of us," in reference to a time where it felt as if Nicki Minaj was the only female rapper at the time in the industry, showing she never cared about being on top. Rather, she found it necessary to use her voice to uplift women in the music industry. She would, throughout her career, collaborate with many talented female rappers in both music and Hollywood, creating more opportunities, especially for Black women, to be seen as more than just objects of desire, which was a significant issue being generally ignored in the hip-hop sphere. Queen Latifah would make just as big of an impact within Hollywood, bringing authenticity and creative depth to all of her characters, leaving us with iconic performances. She would go on to be the first female rapper to win a Grammy for her work, proving that we all win when we uplift voices. She would later go on to win many other accolades, such as Emmys and other nominations. And I'd like to leave with this small quote from Queen Latifah herself when she was receiving an award for The Power of Women by Variety Lifetime.
I observed the world in a different way, and I observed things right around me, and I love that beat, and I love those rhymes, but I also did not like some of the things I was seeing in the world, and I knew that I could use music as a tool to talk about those things, to say something about it, to bring awareness to it, and to do it in a way that made us feel together. I know what it looks like when women don't get along, when we backbite each other, when we fight against each other. But I also know what it looks like when we do. And when we stand together, there is nothing more potent. There's nothing stronger.
Queen Latifah, till this day, still advocates for women's rights throughout Hollywood and throughout her industry grasp. With as many accolades as she has now, and with the amount of power she holds, she continues to use her voice to advocate for those who cannot speak for themselves. It's a testament to the power of authenticity, and she is constantly being a symbol of hope for many women, especially in the Black community. I know for myself especially, I grew up a huge fan of Queen Latifah. To be able to talk about her now is genuinely a huge honor. Queen Latifah was never super open and out about her sexuality. Rather, it was simply a part of her. And with that, it, in a way, also was simply a part of her music sound. Her music has made such a huge impact. The lyrics that she wrote were all based on her real-life experiences out on the streets, seeing the absolute disrespect that women were experiencing, including herself. She made it a point to encourage women to fight and defend for themselves, not to fight each other, rather to fight whatever entity, whatever being was attempting to make them fight each other. It was never about infighting for her, and it was always about the uplifting of voices. Not only is she a LGBT icon simply for being who she is also a musical and rap icon, simply, once again, for being who she is and advocating for the rights of others through her lyrics. I highly implore everyone to look into Queen Latifah if you haven't at once in your life, whether it be going to look through her music or looking at her Hollywood experiences. She's been in a lot of very iconic shows that people might find interesting, such as The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Hanging with Mr. Cooper. And if you're not a fan of her television experience, then you could also go and see one of her films, such as Jungle Fever, Juice, or House Party 2. I know for myself, I am a very big fan of her holiday films, however, which don't get nearly as much accolade. And since it is that time of year, I will have to finish my portion of this podcast with a recommendation to watch one of my favorite Queen Latifah films, which is The Last Holiday. It feels like a very good lesson on life and a very good representation of the type of person she is.
As stated previously, Queen Latifah's impact is profound, especially considering the era in which she began to rise to fame. Queen Latifah stood out from the rest with her powerful lyricism. In the early rap scene of New York, it was a male-dominated culture. Often, lyrics included dehumanizing language, and it was common practice, particularly vulgar language directed towards women. Music and lyrics have a way of influencing the listeners and influencing their attitude and behavior. Rap music as a genre has been proven to be very complex and is influenced by culture and personal experience in many ways. There is a side that can compromise a woman's humanity through harmful words, but as Queen Latifah shows, she takes harmful language and she gives herself back the power. Her most notorious song, Unity, is the perfect example. Take this string of lyrics. One of them felt my booty. He was nasty, yeah. I turned around, read, somebody was catching the wrath. Then the little one said, haha, yeah, the bitch, and laughed. Since he was with his boys, he tried to break fly, huh. I punched him dead in his eye and said, who you calling a bitch? Although my reading of these lyrics do not do justice to Queen Latifah and the impact of this song and specifically these lyrics, it is a perfect example to provide context to how especially young black women are treated. Through Queen Latifah's own personal experience, she gives insight onto the mindset of some men who have likely been influenced negatively to treat women a certain way. Queen Latifah fights back on this narrative and shows them that she is not something to mess with. I feel that many young girls could use this mindset to not allow themselves to be treated with this disrespect and stand up for themselves. These early lyrics of Queen Latifah's are quite similar to the rap girls to come after her. Other icons such as Nicki Minaj and Cardi B you can see that Queen Latifah's lyricism has made an impact not only on how they create music, but also in how they portray themselves to the world with confidence, expanding the voice of hip-hop. Queen Latifah is an icon in activism in her own right. She is the queen of hip-hop, as several magazines refer to her as such. But I also cannot help but to notice how similar her legacy is to Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. Queen Latifah has her activism, iconic song hit Unity, but I'm sure the older generations are familiar with Aretha Franklin's Respect. I could not help but to notice the differences, or rather the similarities both of them have, both having a profound impact on the music industry as young Black women, social justice rights, and women's empowerment. Queen Latifah may have lived a very public and impactful life, but she now chooses to keep it private. What I find inspiring about her is how she has lived loud and made change. Now she lives privately. As a queer woman, she does not feel the need to overstate herself or prove herself to the world. Queen Latifah simply lives as she is, and if take it or leave it, that's just how she is. Hope that you learned something about Queen Latifah and her impact on culture as a queer woman.